For decades, global football has poured millions of dollars into developing the game across Africa. Training centers, youth academies, women's football programs, grassroots facilities. The goal is simple: grow the sport where passion already exists. But in the Republic of the Congo, a program designed to build football's future has instead become the center of a shocking corruption scandal. At the heart of the case is the president of the National Football Federation, Blaise Mayolas, head of the country's governing body for the sport. According to investigators, money intended to develop football in the country was allegedly diverted away from its intended purpose. The funds came from FIFA, the international governing body of world football, which regularly distributes development grants to national federations through programs designed to strengthen the sport globally. In this case, the amount under scrutiny totaled approximately $1.3 million. The money was supposed to support two key projects. Part of the funding was meant to improve facilities for women's football, a sector that has struggled for resources across much of Africa. Another portion was allocated for the construction of a national training center intended to support youth development and coaching programs. But according to authorities investigating the case, those funds allegedly never fully reached their intended destinations. Instead, prosecutors claimed the money was redirected through a network of financial transactions connected to individuals close to the Federation leadership. What makes the scandal even more shocking is the number of people allegedly involved. Authorities say the scheme was not limited to a single official. Investigators claim members of Mayolas' own family were also connected to the alleged financial operation. Court proceedings eventually expanded the case to include both his wife and his son. Together, prosecutors argued they were involved in the diversion of development funds meant for the country's football system. The allegations triggered a national investigation and quickly drew international attention. For a country where football represents both pride and opportunity, the idea that money meant to support young players and women's teams may have been misused struck a nerve. The investigation moved forward through the Congolese justice system. Evidence was examined, financial records were reviewed, and prosecutors laid out their case in court. The result was a verdict that stunned many observers. According to reports, the court sentenced the Federation president, along with his wife and son, to life imprisonment for their role in the alleged misuse of football development funds. If upheld, the ruling represents one of the most severe criminal penalties ever associated with football corruption. A scandal that began with development money has now become a story of power, accountability, and the fragile trust placed in those who run the world's most popular sport. And the deeper investigators looked, the more troubling the story became. When financial scandals emerge in football, they rarely begin with dramatic arrests or courtroom verdicts. They begin quietly. In the Republic of the Congo, the investigation into the leadership of the National Football Federation started with a question about missing development funds provided by FIFA. These funds were not small grants. They were part of global programs designed to strengthen football in countries where infrastructure, coaching resources, and youth systems still need significant investment. Millions of dollars flow through these initiatives every year. But in this case, auditors and investigators began to notice discrepancies in how the money was reported and where it actually ended up. At the center of the scrutiny was Blaise Mayolas, the president of the Congolese Football Federation. Authorities began tracing financial records linked to development funds allocated to the country's football programs. According to reports, approximately $1.3 million had been distributed for specific projects meant to grow the sport. Part of the funding, around $500,000, was intended to support women's football programs. This money was supposed to strengthen leagues, improve resources for clubs, and expand opportunities for female players in a country where the women's game has historically struggled for funding. Another portion of the funds, about $800,000, was allocated for the construction and improvement of a national football training center. That facility was expected to serve as a hub for youth development, coaching education, and talent identification. But investigators claim that large portions of this funding could not be fully accounted for. financial trails allegedly led to companies and accounts connected to individuals linked to the Federation leadership. Authorities also examined the use of special emergency funds distributed during the global pandemic. During that period, FIFA provided additional financial support to national associations to help stabilize football programs affected by economic shutdowns. According to reports, a $500,000 relief fund was meant to assist women's football clubs across the country. However, investigators claim that only $20,000 of that funding actually reached the clubs it was meant to support. The rest, prosecutors allege, disappeared into a web of financial transfers that investigators began piecing together. As the evidence accumulated, authorities expanded their investigation beyond the Federation president himself. Court filings eventually linked members of his family to the alleged financial scheme. The scope of the investigation continued to grow. Financial documents were analyzed. Witness testimony was gathered, and prosecutors began building a case that the misuse of football development funds may have been systematic rather than accidental. What had initially appeared to be a bookkeeping discrepancy was now turning into something far more serious: a corruption investigation with international implications. As the investigation into the missing football development funds deepened, attention quickly focused on the leadership of the National Federation. At the center of the controversy stood Blaise Mayolas, the long-serving president of the Congolese Football Federation. For years, Mayolas had overseen the administration of the country's football programs and the distribution of development funding provided by FIFA. Now, investigators wanted answers. Authorities began requesting financial records, project reports, and documentation connected to the millions of dollars allocated for football development initiatives. The goal was straightforward: determine whether the money had been used for its intended purpose. During the inquiry, prosecutors examined a series of transactions that allegedly redirected funds through accounts connected to individuals associated with the Federation. Those financial movements became a central focus of the case. According to court filings reported by local media, investigators began questioning not only Federation officials, but also individuals connected to companies that allegedly received development funds. The investigation eventually widened beyond the Federation offices. Authorities began examining the possible involvement of members of Mayolas' family. Prosecutors claimed that both his wife and his son were connected to financial channels through which the money had allegedly been diverted. Their alleged role became a key part of the case presented before the court. Throughout the proceedings, the defense strongly denied wrongdoing. Supporters of the Federation leadership argued that the accusations were politically motivated and that the financial irregularities were being misinterpreted by investigators. They described the case as a conspiracy designed to remove the existing leadership from power. But prosecutors continued presenting documentation intended to demonstrate how the development funds had been transferred and how the money allegedly failed to reach the football programs it was meant to support. The court reviewed financial records, transaction histories, and testimony connected to the case. Witnesses were questioned about the structure of the Federation's financial operations and the oversight mechanisms that were supposed to protect development funding. For many observers, the case highlighted how vulnerable football development programs can become when financial oversight is weak. Millions of dollars intended to nurture young talent and expand opportunities for players can quickly become targets for misuse if safeguards fail. As the trial progressed, the stakes became increasingly clear. This was no longer just a dispute over accounting practices. It had become a criminal case involving allegations of corruption tied directly to funds meant to support the future of football in the country. And when the court finally delivered its ruling, the consequences would be far more severe than anyone initially expected, because the verdict would send a powerful message about accountability in football governance. When corruption cases emerge in football administration, the question investigators eventually ask is not only what happened, but why it happened. In the Republic of the Congo, the case involving Blaise Mayolas has raised deeper questions about the systems designed to protect development money in the global game. Every year, millions of dollars flow from FIFA to national football associations around the world. These funds are meant to build infrastructure, support youth programs, and expand opportunities for players in countries where resources are limited. For developing football nations, that money can be transformative. Training facilities can be built. Coaches can be trained. Youth academies can be funded. And women's football programs can grow in places where investment has historically been scarce. But these same development funds also create a risk. Whenever large amounts of money move through organizations with limited financial oversight, the potential for misuse increases. This is why international football authorities have spent years attempting to strengthen monitoring systems for how development grants are spent. Yet scandals continue to surface in different parts of the football world. In this particular case, prosecutors argued that money intended for football development programs was allegedly diverted through financial channels connected to individuals close to the federation leadership. The alleged scheme, according to investigators, involved transferring funds through businesses and accounts that were not directly connected to the projects the money was meant to support. That is why the involvement of family members became a central element of the case presented before the court. If true, investigators argued, it suggested that the diversion of funds was not simply an administrative error, but a deliberate financial strategy. But the defense offered a very different explanation. Supporters of the Federation leadership insisted that the accusations were exaggerated and politically motivated. They argued that disagreements over football governance had been turned into criminal accusations as part of a larger struggle for control of the Federation. Such conflicts are not uncommon in football politics. Around the world, national associations are often battlegrounds for competing factions seeking influence over the sport's administration and financial resources. In that environment, accusations can quickly become entangled with political rivalries. Still, the court ultimately had to decide based on evidence rather than speculation. Financial records, witness testimony, documented transactions. These were the elements that shaped the legal outcome. Regardless of the final interpretation, the case revealed something important about modern football governance. The global game relies on trust. Trust that development money will reach players and programs. Trust that officials entrusted with managing the sport will act responsibly. And when that trust breaks, the damage extends far beyond a single federation. It threatens the credibility of the entire system designed to grow football worldwide. The final chapter of the Congo football corruption case brought an unprecedented legal outcome. After months of investigation, courtroom hearings, and the presentation of financial evidence, the national judiciary delivered a ruling that shocked both football fans and governance observers alike. At the center of the verdict was Blaise Mayolas, the president of the National Football Federation. Alongside him, the court held his wife and son accountable for their alleged involvement in the misuse of approximately $1.3 million in FIFA development funds. According to reports, all three were sentenced to life imprisonment, a penalty that represents one of the most severe punishments ever handed down for corruption within football governance in Africa. The court cited the systematic diversion of funds intended for youth football development, women's programs, and national training facilities. Prosecutors argued that the alleged scheme was deliberate, involving a network of financial transfers designed to redirect money away from its intended beneficiaries. The ruling highlighted the court's determination to hold powerful individuals accountable, regardless of their social status or position within the sport. For many in the football community, the sentence served as a stark reminder of the responsibility that comes with managing public and international funds. The implications of the case extend far beyond the Mayolas family. It exposed vulnerabilities in the systems governing football funding, showing how oversight mechanisms can fail even when international authorities are involved. FIFA itself had provided both routine development grants and emergency relief funds during the global pandemic, intended to support national programs in the Congo. Yet, as investigators revealed, only a fraction of these funds reached their intended destinations. Youth academies, women's football clubs, and training facilities suffered the consequences. The case also sparked conversations about transparency and accountability in football administration globally. If national federations cannot be trusted to manage funds responsibly, the credibility of international governing bodies may be questioned. For aspiring footballers in the Congo, the story has practical consequences. Programs that were supposed to nurture their talent and provide opportunities were undermined. And for global football fans, the case offers a glimpse behind the scenes where power, influence, and money intersect and sometimes collide with justice. While the life sentences represent the conclusion of this particular legal battle, the broader lesson resonates far beyond one federation. It is a cautionary tale about the importance of ethical leadership, stringent oversight, and the consequences of betraying trust in institutions designed to serve the sport. The Congo FIFA scandal is now part of football history, a story that will be remembered not for goals scored or matches won, but for the stark demonstration of how accountability can reach even the highest offices in sport. And for those watching closely, it leaves a simple but powerful question. How many other corners of the football world still hide secrets waiting to be exposed? Because in the end, justice may be slow, but when it arrives, it leaves an undeniable mark.